Recently, I finished up a 100% playthrough of Tales of Iron. Well, today we're going to go through the sequel, Tales of Iron 2. This one is called Whiskers of Winter and has us play from the point of view from Arlo. This is very similar to the first game, but now all weapons and armor have elements tied to them, and we gain access to powerful magic. Sounds like some pretty neat stuff, so let's get right into it. This is how I spent 17 hours 100%ing Tales of Iron 2. Since I played the first game in Bloody Whisker mode, I chose the same here. A massive battle called the War of the Rift took place where dark-winged bats cut down anyone in their path. A powerful Warden was able to wipe out these monsters from the land for a time of peace. But on the icy mountaintops, those dreaded Darkwings had secretly been regrowing their forces, ready to lay waste to the Rat Kingdom once again. On the flip side, King Radis has had another son. Being only a half-brother to Reggie and Dennis, he was sent off to the Warden where he could be raised in hiding. We awake as Arlo. Instead of equipping items from a chest, we now have an inventory section where weapons and armor can be changed at any given time. I made myself look as presentable as possible before Lord Eivor takes me out to the frigid outskirts. This will be Arlo's first hunt, as we learn about our grappling hook feature and check out the bestiary. This updates with info every time you meet a new creature, giving you both the strengths and the weaknesses for your foes in the form of different elements. Now, in the first game, you would use poison to buff your damage. Instead, we're going to be given what's called a whetstone. You sharpen your blade, giving it that boost in damage, but each attack will use up the sharpness until it's gone. You can hold 2 of these at any given time while you dodge, block, parry, and overall just try to stay alive. A backstabber mother is our first boss, being a large porcupine. With a poison axe in hand and the Warden helping me out, there wasn't much of a battle to speak of. She gets cut down while we emerge unscathed from a successful hunt. Excited to be among the hunters at last, we rest for the night, only to be awoken not by the Warden, but by an explosion of fire. The bats have returned, torching our castle to the ground. Each new opponent you take down will drop monster parts. These can be used to upgrade and craft pieces of equipment, like getting a stronger weapon. With a key, we can make our way out onto the battlefield. Our father, the Warden, was locked in combat with Count Kazak, leader of the Darkwing army. Before our very eyes, he is beheaded by the invader. As we hold back our pain, this mighty undead sky scorcher crushes us beneath its feet. Upon awakening from our near-death experience, we look around taking in the destruction and chaos. Uncle Leaf hands us a charged sword, claiming the villagers will need my help. After dispatching a few bats, we collect our first trap and find ourselves face to face with a baron riding one of these scorchlings. Obviously, I learned more about these through my entire playthrough, but traps are highly valuable items you can have equipped along with whetstones. Basically, you get 2 whetstones and 1 trap from all 4 of the elements. These must be purchased, so you won't always have them, but usually you can have that for like most of the boss fights. On top of that, you want to match your weapon's element to the boss you're fighting, so combat can look very different depending on how you play it. I fell in love with the traps immediately, as they usually stun bosses or at least stop their current animations, and fire ended up being one of my main weapon elements as it burns over time, which when has that ever not been good to have? By now you're probably wondering, how the heck is combat going to be hard now with all these tools at your disposal? Well, it turns out enemies and bosses can apply elements to you as well. When this happens, you not only take some damage, but you're completely locked in place. Only way out is to spam the B button before you get attacked again. After a while, the Baron gets off his pet's back to face me rat to bat. I was still getting the hang of things, so this didn't look all that clean, but only 3 attempts and he can be finished off. And so, the true game begins, as our 2 blacksmith friends perish from their wounds. The first quest we select is to recruit a new chef for the castle. Captain Blacktail arrives on the docks, allowing us to fast travel to the various world locations. And so we make our way to the Golden Forest. Some mushroom frogs were waiting to ambush me, and to my surprise, they took me out rather quickly. Archers I found extremely difficult to deal with, since they constantly dodge away to avoid your attacks, and the longer they dodge, the more chances you have to take an arrow to the knee. We arrive in a village of owls. Erica was sent out to rescue the chef's daughter, and we're asked to assist her in doing so. After dispatching a few more fun guys from their hidden bushes, 2 farmers emerge. The Badger brothers claim Frey had been heading for the pond. I stopped off in the Badger hut really quick to purchase a farmer card from them. At the time, I didn't know what this was, but later we would need to find several of these. Frey was looking for an egg when we found her. We steal a key from one of the Badger brothers, letting us delve deeper into the tunnels below. It's here we find a strange statue burning with hot fire. He grants us a strange power, allowing us to access our first magic ability, a large fireball. So yeah, that's pretty darn useful. Further on in the tunnels, we encounter Big Spore. Technically, I don't think these guys are frogs, but they do look like them if they were wearing mushroom hats or something, I don't know. So you're probably wondering how the magic system works. Well, it's very simple. You gain access to 4 separate elements. However, we only have 1 at the moment. After the fireball is cast, you build it up again by attacking. Both ranged and melee combat builds this up, and rather quickly too. Essentially, it gives you a power move that you can use multiple times throughout a fight. Fireball ended up being one of my favorites as it deals easily the most damage and travels in a straight line, rarely missing. Now that we were given a bow, we can very much just sit back and pelt things to death with both arrows and magic. All ranged weapons have 20 ammo, and they can be charged to deal considerably more damage. Although the targeting on these is much worse in the sequel. A lot of time I found you would fire off into the side of your screen instead of at the boss because there's a significant delay before your character turns around. Actually, this is a very annoying aspect of ranged combat that you kind of have to just deal with. Leads to a lot of wasted ammo, but you learn to work around it. With that opponent dealt with, we reach the next checkpoint. Here we can learn about another major mechanic, that being the Mole Merchant. This guy will appear right outside every single boss arena. You're going to use gold coins at him to purchase your arrows, mines, and antidotes. I found that refilling to the max on all your consumables was just kind of the norm. Very rarely will you not have enough money to do so, and this stuff makes combat 100 times easier. So you might as well stock back up each chance you get. Frey had found a whole nest of eggs, but of course this brought the attention of a giant snake. This surprised me as I masterfully dodged every attack he had with no practice at all. As I was getting more and more confident, he simply slithered away. That's odd, but with Frey now safely back in town, they offered to leave and start up a new kitchen at our fort. Before going back myself though, I walked into the local tavern speaking with the keeper there. It's here that we can complete all the local quests for this region. The one I was obviously interested in was the Snake Boss quest. On my way to fight this slithery fellow, I met Ernest the fisherman. He had managed to lose his fishing rod, so we'll need to keep our eye out for it. Now, bosses in this game work like bosses do. Fight them in their arena, and once they have no health, you win. However, world bosses behave a bit differently. After accepting their quest, you'll go find them and beat them up until they lose about a quarter of their health. Then you chase them down again and fight them until they reach half health. Finally, you chase them down to a third location and face them one last time. Typically, on the final attempt, bosses can start at around half HP, unless you die to them, in which case they sometimes get a lot more. As you explore each region's map, you'll pay builders to repair travel boards, letting you fast travel all around that map, which makes getting to the boss every time rather painless, although sometimes when you die, the boss will move to a separate location. This is incredibly annoying, although seems to happen because of the day and night cycle, which we'll cover later on. For now, we have a nice dead snake, which was astoundingly easy to defeat. Next up, we have a few small snakes that need to be dealt with. Every quest you complete, whether that be a boss or something else, rewards you with gold coins and some materials, usually covering the cost for you to buy back your arrows and other consumables, as well as saving up some for the story. This snake quest went really well until another large serpent jumped out at me. He's not that challenging to deal with overall, but he does move fast. One interesting change made to this sequel is that AoE attacks are far easier to avoid. Not only do they show you exactly where they're going to land with a large red line, but you can now dodge them. In the first game, these would hit you if you were just near them no matter what. Well, now you can dodge through them if timed correctly, which saves around 1,000 headaches, honestly, as that was very frustrating to deal with. Here you can stay in close to the boss, delaying your dodge a second or two so you waste less time and get to deal more damage. At the moment, I don't have much health, and this big fellow has a full HP bar, so this did take me a few attempts, I have to admit. Okay, now we need to take down some death marches. These centipedes are weak to fire and have very limited moves, but after clearing them all out, a large poison death march appeared. These are probably the easiest bosses, as Bloody Whisker mode in this game is thankfully not super insane or anything. Stuff still hits you hard as heck, and enemies have more health, but the actual moves are not sped up to an insane rate or anything. Another consumable that you might see down there on the left are curative potions. These allow you to gain more resistance to a particular element. For right now, taking the poison version lets me avoid being stunned if I happen to sit in his poison cloud too long. I almost entirely ignored these. I personally just found them mostly unnecessary, and wasting gold on them all the time would leave me with less attack options. After buying some hops from the badger, I headed to the tavern, turning in clay, some brewer's delight, and camp repairs. Another death march needed cleared out, but this time he was fire-based. Luckily, I have a very strong lightning sword that worked well against him, and since the only change from the last death march was a fire breath, he didn't stand much of a chance. Returning to Winter's Edge, our fort, we discuss ways in which to hire a new blacksmith. The Rift could be a good place to look. This is the desolate ruin of the Great Frog Empire. Endless war between rats, bats, and frogs had left it more or less completely destroyed. Frogs appear from the mud, attempting to stab and run, except I would be doing the stabbing and they would never again be doing any running. Outside a large forge, Ron the merman awakes in anger. He appears to have been drinking a lot of, we'll just call it adult apple juice. Now, I don't want to say this fight was easy, but based on what you're seeing here, I kind of have to. The bow is indeed just as strong as it was in the first game. Arguably, it's even stronger, and Mr. Fish here had no idea how to fight back against it. Apparently, the fish's wife and 2 daughters had been kidnapped by frogs. Together, we would rescue them, or possibly die trying. Some large spiders have moved into the underground here, and I have to say, these are some pretty great spiders to fight. I tend to enjoy these as enemy types. Sometimes they're a little too terrifying, like in Bloodborne, but taking down spiders through the safety of a computer screen just seems right, you know? These ones are arguably adorable, and quick to dispatch. The fish now gives us our first two-handed weapon. Using that large hammer, we can break through blocked passages. It's also an essential tool for breaking through shielded opponents. Sadly, this specific weapon type is probably the worst in the entire game. They take far too long to swing even when uncharged and don't do near enough damage to risk doing so. I guess they didn't like us spamming the two-handed axe so much in the first game, as I don't see any way you can even use them anymore. At least, not without heavily challenging yourself. Through the rain and piles of frog corpses, we find the smith's wife. She lies completely still on the ground with her husband sobbing beside her. These disgusting frogs. They've done it again. First they destroy the southern fort, laying waste to King Radis, and now they've torn apart this loving family. None will be left standing when we get through with them. As I ran through the murky storm, another statue appeared. This one granting me the ancient power of ice magic, allowing me to send out ice tornadoes that deal damage and freeze opponents in their tracks. Most of the time either fireworks or ice works, so both together don't really add that much to any one fight, but still, whichever element is best at the time works wonders. With a fiery freakout of sorts, we earn our first achievement: defeat 25 frogs in combat. Climbing up a ladder, we can kneel before a strange altar and accept a special dark crusader helmet. For those who played Lords of the Fallen, this is the best looking armor set from that game, and the statue here is considered a checkpoint or bonfire equivalent from the Lords of the Fallen. An awesome crossover that I definitely wanted to wear. Close by, we find the Knight card across a grappling point. Before the next checkpoint, we stop at a glowing stone to receive a boost in power. Our fire spell has been upgraded to produce even more flames. The mole sold me a two-handed twin blade, but before I can meet back up with the smith, his lifeless head rolled towards me. This creature would get what's coming to him. I finally met my match here, as the large beast was the first to take me down more than a few times. The smaller frog is riding some sort of larger frog behemoth, but you can't hardly hit him because the big boy's blocking so often. Well, traps do stun him, that's helpful, and I am happy to say that twin blades take the best spot for two-handed weapons. These break blocks very quickly and have a massive jump distance forward. Also, it's a twin blade. Those have an inherent cool factor I think most of us have accepted by now. With an ice sword, I was able to stop most attacks before they even happened, getting us into a 1v1 with that little fellow. Blocked a laser and parry. There wasn't too much to this, as he was really focused on shooting out that laser. At least until his helmet broke, that is. Fire and lightning got summoned onto the floor, cutting off large parts of the arena, but I wasn't forced to dodge into them much at all. Freeze the boss for some nice damage, which nobody ever lets you freeze the bosses. That's actually really cool to see. And this family wrecker is completely torn apart. As we free the smith's daughters, they mourn their parents' deaths, before agreeing to leave for our keep as my new smiths. While returning to Fish Village, I ran into a meditating frog. This one was not hostile, but an outcast here to rebuild his ancestral home. Just as we agreed to a truce, this massive stealth claw leapt down to fight us. The stealthy reptilian likes to go invisible, so you can't harm him. Too bad for him, invisibility just means I can't see you. Doesn't mean I can't wildly fire arrows across into your scaly backside. The one downside of having all these elemental weapon options is the first time you meet an opponent, you probably are going to have on the wrong stuff. As odd as it may sound, they let you pause mid-battle to change all of your equipment. I did not expect them to do that, but thank goodness they did because my ice sword was barely scratching this beast. Poison performed much better, let me tell you. Back at the forge, we meet a bird who's lost his spectacles. More importantly, a spider queen has been spotted outside the village. My new frog friend was willing to help fight the monstrosity, and with my good lightning sword in hand, we went to work. Parries still give you the best chance in combat, but lightning is a pretty close second. Its ability to stun is probably the most useful tool you have overall, although we'll get to see its true power in the future. Outside under a bridge, we find the silver spectacles. Our bird friend can now become a merchant again. Return Maggie's missing spectacles to her at Bogmire Forge. Freeing yet another frog from the spider's webs, we meet her in the queen's lair. Honestly, I don't think you're supposed to do this, but I placed all 4 traps underneath her at once. Based on my experience, I think this makes only one of them do the damage, or at least only one actually affects the boss. You're probably supposed to spread them out throughout the battle, so you can get stuns, freezes, things like that. But big explosions look really cool, so I rarely use them correctly. Guess who relied on his bow once again because he's a complete coward? I mean, because he's super smart and is thinking strategically. Yep, that would be me. Because world bosses move around, it makes them a lot easier. You can stock up before all 3 encounters. Costs a lot of gold coins, but it's not like you can take it with you. A quest to take down tailspinner nests sounded like a good time. This one only had me fight a few spiders, so no tales of woe to tell. Maggie had 2 of those special cards for sale. Still not sure what they do just yet, but gotta grab them before I forget about them. Then after purchasing decorations for the fort, it was time to sail back and check on my new smiths. Turning in iron, we get some more coins, and now it's time to find a builder to repair all the damage done to our home. In the outskirts, we pick up an ancient runestone that can be slotted into this pillar. Now to be on the lookout for 3 more of those. The rat village leader mentioned that a beaver had just moved in up the hill. After saving some farmers from a few vultures, they told me the beaver had disappeared. We move on ahead only to reach our 3rd statue of power, this one offering the magic of poison. Using this summons a purple root under all of your opponents that applies poison to them. Deals little bits of damage at a time while giving you a giant window of safety as everything is thrown backwards. More porcupines lay in waiting as I fear the beaver has gotten himself into trouble. And indeed he has. Playing dead to buy himself some time, the beaver needs saving from another backstabber mother. She took me down on repeat as I was having some distance issues. The twin blade is indeed very strong for breaking blocks, but often enemies move backwards just enough so you don't connect and stand there waiting to be destroyed. The follow-up on the twin blade jumps across the whole arena almost, but your first one isn't quite as far. Just getting in a little closer fixes this, but you know, mistakes were made. Other than that, we're beginning to dish out some damage. Having 3 magics at once to throw out is like 1/4 HP at a time. You'll love to see it. After another monster decapitation, the beaver was more than excited to come fix up our fort. With 3 workshops ready to be fixed up, we can begin work on the town. At the beaver, we select a builder's yard and pay 10 coins to get it set up. We can set up more shops as well, but my reckless spending on consumables has left me with only a single coin to spend. And to progress, we need to construct both a forge and a kitchen. Turning in 10 wood and accepting the next building quest gives us just enough to construct the tier 2 builder's yard while also purchasing the basic kitchen. But now what? The first thing I tried was exploring the outskirts some more. Inside a hidden passage, I found another one of these altars where I collected the Dark Crusader chestplate. Looking even cooler, we sail over to the Owl Village to find 5 new boss quests have appeared on the board here. Now what I wanted to do was fight the Lightning Centipede because he looked really cool. However, I couldn't figure out how to find him. The map was showing a different boss, and when I did eventually find him, he disappeared upon me entering the arena. This was extremely confusing, but as per usual, reading would clear things up for me. This game has a day and night cycle. Sleeping in a town bed lets you select between 4 times of day. Well, some bosses only appear during the day, and others only appear during the night. This is because they all wander around the same areas, so in order to fight what you want to fight, you read the quest and then sleep to spawn them in. Chase them down 3 separate times and finish them off to collect your coins. The frustrating aspect of this is if you die too many times to one boss, the day and night cycle can change on its own. Heck, this can happen if you fast travel too often. So sometimes you'll die and then re-enter the arena for it to be a completely different boss that has full health. Now you need to teleport back to town, sleep, teleport again, and then continue your hunt, so to speak. It's a little goofy to say the least, although once you figure this out, bosses can be hunted back to back for some action-packed combat. With that all explained, I wasted a lot of time fighting that large snake twice, since I hadn't figured everything out quite yet, and eventually I managed to kick over the electric centipede, who as you can imagine is the same as the other centipedes, but with lightning. I know, shocking information, isn't it? Tier 3 Builder's Yard is now available, earning us another achievement. Upgrade the builder to its highest level. The Frog Village had another queen spider roaming around, but this one only spawned at night. A big aspect you'll notice in this game is repeat bosses. There are specific story boss fights that are one and dones, while the world bosses are all repeatable, so you can build weapons off of them or just make more money. And at first, I wasn't sure how to 100% these, since they're all the same bosses I already fought. Eventually, I settled into collecting all of the check marks. Every boss must be defeated until their quests are all checked off at the different quest givers. Usually that means fighting them as part of the story and then hunting down the boss one extra time. Fighting the same thing multiple times isn't something people always view as good gameplay, but I'll have to be honest, it is still fun here. You definitely don't have to fight them more than once if you don't want to, and if you do, then that's more combat, which is easily the best part of the game. Too bad they don't give you the fast travel points in the frog area until much later on. But with only one spider hunted, we didn't have to walk that far. The forest still has several bug variants walking around. The ice variant went down. Another fire one was pretty aggressive, but I enjoyed combating his moveset. Our second poison guy gets taken out with my lightning sword I really started to like. Then another snake was moving around, so he had to go as well. By now, I was getting pretty decent at fighting these dudes. An owl merchant sold me a bag of herbs along with several decorations. Monster hunting gives you buttloads of gold, so tier 2 kitchen gets constructed along with the tier 1 smith shop. This automatically gives us some food ingredients which the cook can turn into a tasty meal. With our HP bar looking much better, we can turn in the bag of herbs for gold and speak with the rangers. The king had sent these rangers to the rift where several of them had been captured. I make my way there immediately, finding the Darkwings doing as they please. This was the first time I met with bats that used shields, and wow, they're some of the most challenging opponents. Breaking their blocks was excruciatingly difficult as there are always two of them. They love to interrupt your charge attacks, summoning ice all over to slow you down. Luckily, this Crusader set is pretty resistant to ice, but I spent much longer in this small segment of combat than I really care to admit. The ranger Robin has escaped from the Darkwings, but he needs our help to rescue his son. As we're ambushed, I go down a few more times. A lot of the healing spots next to checkpoints are berry bushes instead of full bug juice refills. Since these only respawn after you die, and they don't refill all of your health, it's often better to die 2 times just to get all your healing back. This occurrence seems rare, but there are 2 or 3 parts of the map that are like this. As we approach the temple ruins, it seems we are too late. Little John is eaten by one of these frightening sky creatures in the blink of an eye. Tales of Iron doesn't play with the narrative. If rats need to die to set the scene, rats are going to die. Boss design is much harder to describe in this sequel because each fight is done so tightly. You're always going to deal with at least one element. Usually that's lying somewhere in the room, forcing you to stay out of it. This boss here attacked so quickly you could only hit once before dodging, but that's actually all you need. The fire he's weak to will set to burning only a few hits later, so no greed is necessary. 2 things I struggled with from here on out were my armor, which is weak to fire. Didn't really learn this till the end of the game, but the Crusader armor I refuse to take off is horrible against fire. And secondly, the healing in this game is, how do I explain this? It's terrible. I'm not really sure what changed about it, but here, healing takes forever. So long, in fact, that it's honestly easier to no-hit some of these bosses than it is to heal during them. Not only that, but the amount of healing you get is far less in the sequel. Right now, that part's okay, but any more health and that's gonna be brutal to deal with. Possibly this is to compensate for attacks being easier to dodge, you having more powerful forms of damage, and bosses don't move at the sound of light either. All that being said, this was one of the more enjoyable bosses overall, and I didn't even cheese him with range. He seemed a little too fast for my bow actually. Robin was clearly upset at the loss of his son. He had not encountered anything like these flying abominations down in the south. Together we returned to the fort, learning that the bats have invaded the village as well. We arrived to see the buildings go up in flames. The bats here pay dearly with their pitiful lives as we take on an undead captain. He hurt really bad when he connected, but on my second attempt I realized he was quite weak in terms of defense. seconds. Spamming my magic brings him low enough for my ranged combat to completely remove him from battle. I gotta say, between range damage being pitiful or overpowered, I think I prefer the overpowered route. Not even remotely ashamed to admit that. In the icy peaks above town, we run into the fourth and final statue, granting us the power of lightning magic, allowing us to strike down the shocking power of electricity upon our foes. Oh, by the way, this magic lets you stun even bosses for several seconds. Yeah, it's as useful as you're probably imagining right now. Time for what I consider to be one of the top 3 hardest boss fights. Count Iblis. The Countess took me around a half hour to focus down with my good buddy Robin. The biggest attack I struggled with was this leap back. The red indicator makes it seem like you can dodge out of it, when in reality it's way longer than it looks. I got caught like 20 times trying to time it correctly. Ends up closing in towards the bat worked every time. Also, this was where I found out an interesting tidbit about my lightning bow. Not only does charging it grant you more damage, but it actually grants your arrows an effect. If you hold long enough, your arrows stun the boss for a second. This isn't going to be long enough to attack or anything, but it lets you completely stop any difficult move they throw at you. And if the target you shoot is flying, it knocks them out of the air. That, on top of some excellent parries, leads to the Scorchling flying away. Now, the Countess herself was something else. This was the one and only time from both the first and second game that I couldn't parry a yellow attack. She stabs so quickly that I just could not react in time to even see it. Usually I ended up dodging instead, since that worked on all her other sword strikes. For her final phase, she freaks out and goes bananas. So my solution to learning that part was to skip it. Charge up the shock arrows and don't let her move. How the heck is this lightning bow so busted? I could not believe it. Haha, didn't even learn the full fight and I still beat you ugly old bat. We free the villagers from their icy cages and return to the fort once again. After upgrading the smithy to level 2, we finally have access to the second class of weapons. Take your favorite weapons, mash them together with some monster parts, and out comes a more powerful version. Usually they have more damage and maybe less weight. For now, my picks were a lightning sword and a poison axe. For two-handed, we have an ice sword, a lightning sword, and a poison twin blade. And for ranged, we have an ice gun with poison, lightning, and fire bow. I never tested the crossbows, if anyone's wondering about them. To increase our kitchen anymore, we're gonna need a local farmer. The Badger brothers seem like decent candidates, but unfortunately Marco's brother had recently disappeared. We find him deep underground, sleeping next to some mushrooms. In order to wake him from this shroom-induced slumber, we need a stink bug. One of the owl merchants could sell me one along with another decoration and a jar of honey. But upon returning to the mushrooms, a dark owl claims the healers have taken him to a nearby shrine. Something about this seemed off, which wasn't helped by more night owls attacking with their bow and arrows. Even more owls guard the altar entrance. Once again, I struggled heavily, as shielded enemies are not to be trifled with. Add in these aggressive axe fellows and things go downhill faster than a sled in the snow. Finally making my way up to the shrine, I could not believe my eyes. Lorenzo the Badger lay there sleeping as blood poured from his now missing arm. These owls were no healers, and as it turns out, this would probably be the second most challenging boss fight of the game. Spanning my next 45 minutes, I realized they were forcing me to defeat 2 very challenging enemies in order to spawn in the boss, and any death spawns in the 2 owls every single time. I ended up relying on my poison twin blade for them after I spammed all 4 of my magics. Even still, they felt really tanky, but with them taken care of, an elder owl eats the badger's arm, becoming a were owl. Luckily, the poison axe I recently upgraded came in handy. As for the attacks, they were all tough to avoid, but at least after some time you had them down, all except for the ground slam. This was the one AoE that fell off to me, as I wasn't quite getting far enough away from it. Lightning just gives you such a nice window with that stun. It's easily the best element for bosses when they're weak to it. Now the were owl becomes enraged, which only adds in some feathers that she throws at you. Easy to block, but not easy to see coming. My saving grace were the few parries that she tried to spam at me near the end. And with a single lightning trap down, I had just enough room to counter one last time for the win. This was the longest I'd spent on 1 HP, as the she-beast was something else, man. We awaken the badger with our stink bug as he returns to his brother very frightened. These 2 farmers are more than happy to come work at the fort, considering what just happened. They give me a were owl skull that I took down under their set of caves and placed on a pedestal. This dark cavern housed another rune stone we would need in the village. On the other side of these tunnels, we can crawl through a small metal pipe leading to a few moles. One of them is using a fishing rod to dip his food into honey. We trade him our honey jar for that fishing rod. The elder were owl's death was good for the forest, but more fanatics would need to be dealt with. This turns out to be a cult of dark dark owls who are not a part of the village here. They feed off of other animals that they have no business eating, and this turns them into wild monsters. The event here has you deal with 2 owls at once, who really beat me up for a bit. Then you take on 2 archers at once, who really love to catch you off guard. Finally, you combat a special foe who transforms into a premature were-owl. Unironically, the hardest part here was getting past the first 2 enemies. This last section wasn't bad at all, but man, basic enemies in this game give you a run for your money. Now we have a roaming were-owl to deal with as a world boss. I'm not kidding you, this section was the most challenging part of the game. Not the hardest boss per se, but each encounter throws so many enemies at you before the boss that it's a little overkill. And in the end, I couldn't complete this quest because it was just too much to ask. I decided to build a fire pistol and upgrade it since that was the better element. And with one of every trap plus max arrows, maybe that can get me through. I needed the explosions for all these stupid axe guys. Man, do they suck. And funnily enough, I only used 5 of the bullets for the gun. But it was what finished this beast off, so can't say the plan didn't work. Alrighty, but screw these guys. I think I'm done fighting them for a while. Returning to Moonlight Pond, we can hand over the fishing rod to our stork friend for an achievement. Returning Ernest's missing fishing pole to him at the lake in the Golden Forest. The farmers were now officially set up, so we can buy nuts, milk, and a banana for the next meal. A nice ice cream sundae for more max HP. Sounds like a good deal to me. Rita the blacksmith claims she needs to have her hammer blessed at a shrine to regain its smithing power. Once there, she mentions that a druid will need to be present for this to work. Up in the old ruins, the hedgehog was being bullied by some native frogs. He was safe with his spiky outer coat, but it's probably better if we remove these cretins from the equation altogether. The druid would require a special herb in order to repower the hammer. With the key he gave me, we can unlock an area leading down to a lone mole. He was actually growing the plant we need for his tea, but the fuse to that door had been blown. The new fuse we found was being guarded by frogs, because why would it not be guarded by frogs? Some spiders too apparently, which let me defeat enough of them for my achievement. Defeat 25 tail spinners in combat. We snatch up the fuse, returning to collect our plant from the mole's small greenhouse. Except some giant spiders have made their home here. You're telling me these monster-sized spiders squeezed their way into a locked and very small room? Yeah, I'm not buying it. Where's the second door that's clearly been left open? The druid now uses our mole friend's herb to begin the ritual, but this process has awoken the dead, forcing me to defend the location. I found this kind of funny because the mighty lightning boss from the first game has the exact same moveset as these undead frogs. Literally 1-to-1, they throw their hammer at you and then jump over to slam on your head. And in fact, it threw me off so much that they took me down a few times. In the end, we crushed them down as the druid finishes buffing our smith's hammer. For some easy coin, me and the old froggy boy went out to hunt another stealth claw. Super pistol, meet invisibility. Invisibility, meet super pistol. He had an extra frost breath attack that made things a tad more difficult, even though I was still able to finish him off in one try. Short Tongue explains that he needs my help rescuing many of the villagers for his new settlement. Upon arriving to battle the frogs, it appears we've been duped, as a ninja assassin attacks with his grappling hook and blow darts. One feature done very well in Tales of Iron 2 is the environment. Everything looks really great and makes the boss fights feel the way they should. That being said, there are a few times where objects in the environment get in your way. Plants, statues, and other foliage meant to give you this specific view often block your entire character, or worse, the boss itself. Usually this is whatever because bosses are so large, but Newt Newt is tiny and can completely hide himself. I guess this is fitting for the stealthy attack he just pulled, but still. We chased the wounded assassin to a makeshift camp. He threw poison clouds, used a lightning spear, and chucked explosive fire patches down, overwhelming me with the elements. I must have been stunned 4 or 5 times, yet somehow he hardly damaged me at all. Guess all that jumping around was just for show. Next time, try spending more of the fight attacking and less of it showing off. But the question now was who sent this assassin? Short Tongue discovers that Jabba the Hutt, Blubba the Gut, was behind it all. We travel deep into frog territory, demanding the warlord that the enslaved townsfolk be set free. As he laughs in our faces, a pit opens up under our feet, dropping us down to be lunch for this toadcore behemoth. Something I almost forgot to mention is how important the sprint feature is when engaging in boss fights. Now, in the first game, I think you had a sprint feature as well, although I never used it. Probably would have been beneficial, but I didn't for whatever reason. Totally not that I didn't know it existed. No, that couldn't be it. Well, the sprint feature in this sequel is everything. I found the fights far easier just because I could be in the exact position I wanted to be in at pretty much all times. The tricky part is pressing all the buttons at the same time. Sprint, dodge, attack, parry, spam, Command B to get out of elements. Sometimes my deaths were just because my fingers couldn't keep up with what I wanted to do. The nice thing is, they really do let you overpower a boss if that's what you need to do. Spreading out traps and magic keeps you as aggressive as possible, and the boss as passive as possible. And as far as the boss's traps go, you can greatly nullify those effects by swapping armor. Some sets even have 2 resistances, letting you fully optimize defense. I, of course, ignored all of this because the Crusader fashion was really hitting the spot for me. Did it make things harder at times? Yeah, but who doesn't enjoy a little extra challenge, am I right? That behemoth might be down, but Glub of the Gut still needed to go if we were to free those villagers. His weakness to shock was his downfall, as I had an excellent spear ready to jab as quick as I could. He reminded me a little bit of Donkey Kong, as the barrels on his back are rolled at you and thrown to explode. Well, that really is all the similarity between him and Donkey Kong, though that's probably enough for most people, to be honest. To this day, which is literally 2 days after me beating the game, but to this day I have no idea how I first tried this Croaking King. This obvious Star Wars reference spazzes out, throwing barrels everywhere, and those jumps can carry him directly to your position time and time again. I didn't even rely on my gun all that much. Best not to question a good thing when it comes to you. The rift was now free of tyrannical frogs and home to many who have only ever known war. It was about this time I remembered that the hedgehog had a hut we could probably get into now. He sold me another one of those odd cards, this one being a druid card. Oh, look at that. All of these go on his collection board here. Seems we're only missing 3 of them at this point. Our fort can be upgraded with a tier 3 kitchen, granting us an achievement. Upgrade the chef to its highest level. The farmer now sold spam, bread, and cheese that the chef cooks up into a nice burger, granting us cook all meals at the chef, which means we now have the max HP possible. Tuck the ranger also wants to open up a shop here in the fort, but he wants a really special trinket to attract people. Yes, that trinket is the beak from a very large vulture, because it just has to be difficult, you know? The villagers claimed we could attract one with some blood fruit. While rummaging underground, we snatch up some mole Donalds. I wonder who this is for. The magical pylon for lightning was hidden down here, so that's a nice boost to our already powerful shocks. Tuck finally finds the fruit when a group of vultures viciously attacked. They fall to my mighty lightning, and the gun. Can't forget about the gun. Blood fruit in hand, we make our way up to the mountain, placing it into a cooking pot. Sure enough, this attracts the attention of a gigantic bird beast. At first, I was like, oh geez, this is gonna be a piece of cake. One hit, and a huge chunk of his health is just gone. Then the excitement quickly dissipated as I realized he would be flying up above me more often than not. Well played, bird. Well played. Not sure how he's spawning fire out of thin air, since it manages to cover over half the ground before he lands on me with an explosion. Okay, I guess I'm fine with that, but then he starts firebombing me with eggs. You see, this isn't actually a bird. This is a bird beast, meaning everything we know about flying vultures is completely thrown out the window. Now everybody say it with me. I fired my gun at him, and then did that a few more times for the win. Listen, it's not my fault range damage is this good. I just use the tools I'm given. Oh, and the grapple execution? That's a nice touch, I must admit. Down below the mountain was another maintenance hatch where 2 small moles were living. They were the ones waiting for their Mole Donald's order. So with their tasty meal in hand, we received the Delivery Man achievement. Deliver the late Mole Donalds to Matt and Nath in their outskirts bunker. Mr. Matt and Nath, you are very welcome. We do still have that runestone from the forest, so after slotting that, I hunted a backstabber mother for the coin. This one had been eating out of the villager's garden, causing a minor food shortage. Nothing we haven't seen before, but as I chop off her head, a little face pokes out from behind the stolen veggies. A little baby porcupine appears, much more friendly than most of these creatures. I escort it back to town, fending off the rabid beasts who would scare it away. The farmers immediately fell in love with this little guy, as I suggest they raise him to defend the farm. Delivering clay and bones for 10 coins, I then agree to solve the mystery of a missing cow grub. Guys, I'm thinking the enormous and toothy worm did it. No incriminating evidence yet, but I'm 99% sure it was him. Yep, there's the cow grub. Look at me being a master detective and everything. Oh man, are you weak to fire? I'm guessing this was an early game quest or something. Maybe not, since I just now saw it, but probably should have been. Come on, little cow grub, let's get you home so I can be paid. In the fort, we construct all 3 tiers of the basic shop for our next achievement. Upgrade the shop to its highest level. This rat merchant sells all traps and potions, along with even larger traps that can be placed alongside regular ones. More cheesy damage, you say? By all means, take my money. Another bird beast had been snatching up villagers and flying them up to its nest for breakfast. Noticeably, this encounter was quite troublesome. I had already fought him before, but for whatever reason, all my skills from that fight had just been lost, I guess. This was where I noticed how unbelievably slow healing could be. At max health, we don't have the luxury of only drinking bug juice for a few seconds. You still don't need more than around a quarter HP to survive most hits, so at least we've got that going for us. With the villagers now saved, it was time to slay another bird as a repeatable quest. Quickly wrap that up. Oh wait, it seems he won't show back up on the map. I'm not really sure why this occurred, but no matter what time of day I slept to, he was simply gone. In the end, closing out of the game and resetting fixed the issue. So that's another bird in our books. The final backstabber mother was simple enough to dispatch. Then it was time to clear out all the mudworms. These guys come in every element just like the centipedes living in Owl Forest. The backstabbers were a common enemy during this hunting process, leading to my next achievement. Defeat 25 backstabbers. The poison worm version was insanely weak to fire, making him an easy target. An electric version was probably the most challenging, as he summons lightning down to cover in a decent sized area. He too was afraid of fire though, which seems to be the most useful element for raw damage. The ice worm was easy peasy, since my armor makes me hardly care about that cold element at all. But for the fire worm, I had to swap to a poison weapon, since fighting fire with fire is highly discouraged. There you go, all repeatable quests wrapped up. The Ranger Merchant had another runestone available for sale at a remarkably low price. Upgrading the smithy to tier 3 earns our next achievement, upgrade the smith to its highest level, meaning we now have access to the last weapon upgrades of which I acquired for all the weapon variants I'd been using, which gives us this little achievement. Craft a weapon from the level 3 section at the smithy. Potentially, you could upgrade every item to level 3, however, this would suck you dry of monster parts. I chose to select at least one element type for each one-handed, two-handed, and ranged option. This is when Gray Ears showed up at our doorstep, begging for help against Darkwing raids on the rabbit village. Upon arriving, the two of us cut our way through hordes of nightmarish creatures. Foes that had once appeared as bosses now crawled out of the woodwork as basic peons. Darkwings have an innate sense of danger because just as you begin to attack them, they teleport using some sort of vampiric ability. Archers in particular could stay alive way longer using this ability. Luckily, I had my own ranger tagging along, so they never really stood a chance with or without this power. Captain Barog leapt before us as an undead swordsman. This basic moveset here is about as standard as it gets. Parry or dodge when needed, while avoiding him when he jumps in the air. What I wasn't noticing, however, was the ice cloud he summoned each time he actually landed back down. Again, all enemies have some sort of this elemental attack that they place down, but the arena itself was helping him out. All this snow was making the patch of ice death completely invisible to me. You can definitely spot it once you begin looking for the more sparkly area, but it's easy to miss in the heat of combat. Still a first try though, which had me in a pretty darn good mood. After executing another Darkwing and his Scorchling, we head to Rabbit Village where the Elder agrees to evacuate everyone to the boats, just as he is struck through the neck by an icy spear. Me and Robin were just barely able to make it off the island alive after even more Darkwings moved in to surround us. Now that the villagers are safe, we must return and reclaim the rabbit's home for them. Easier said than done, as a necromancer has been placed in charge. Bringing forth undead bunnies, it would be essential that we stop this madness from spreading further down into the Southern Rat Kingdom. But it gets even worse, as the Rabbit Elder has been converted into one of these disgraceful minions of the dead. My lightning weapon was more than prepared to take him down. Not to mention, I noticed his moveset was not all that different from the rabbit we fought back in the first game. In fact, if I remember correctly, the guardsman helping us out right now was the tournament contestant at the time. You might have noticed that several characters made a second appearance from Reggie's adventure. The pirate captain, our deceased father, and this twin-bladed bunny were all contenders in the tournament there. As the Elder is put to rest, we're forced to combat the Necromancer himself. This is kind of insane, considering you go from one boss fight directly into the next. A pain indeed, you might think. Yet he only managed to hit me one time, as relying on the dark arts for combat apparently makes you slow as dirt. In a way, this was too bad, as avoiding different forms of undead as they were summoned to attack was really cool. Almost wish I could have fought him again, though I would never purposely lose to do that, just in case this turned out to be luck or something. The Hoppy villagers can now return to their icy home as we head back to the fort with one weighty thought on our minds. The Darkwings are never going to stop pillaging us rats and our allies. It's about time we take the fight to them. But we're gonna need some serious allies for this battle. Robin the Ranger suggested that we speak with King Reggie, who would surely be willing to protect his fellow rats in the north. And so we set sail for the Crimson Keep Fort. Upon arriving, the place seems much larger than I would have expected. The port was filled with ships, as Robin explained the moles had been paid a great deal by the king after he fought in some sort of underground arena. The king card was purchasable from a merchant here, as well as the smith card in the same shop. We meet up with the king, his squire, and his large brother Dennis. Reggie was not willing to risk his men at first, but after claiming the Darkwings would ravage the south should our northern forts fall, he agreed. After all, our story reminded him of the time when his own kingdom had been left in ruin. Of course, there had to be more to it, as the people needed to be convinced to go fight in the frozen lands up north. A trial by combat would surely prove our worth. Opponent number 1 was Doug the Squire. Don't let his small stature put you at ease, as he's probably the one who took me down the most. With super agile jumps and blade spins across the arena, he would easily get out of my sword's reach. The first try was mostly about figuring out the best element to use. I ended up settling on a lightning sword and poison twin blade. These two probably turned out to be my most used weapons overall, as it's a common enemy weakness. For one-handed weapons, the type doesn't really matter. I found axes, swords, and spears to all be equally as good. Of course, for two-handed, the twin blade is an easy best pick, though the larger swords were decent enough to use as well. For our second test, we would go up against the king's muscle, his brother Dennis. Fire worked much better on him, and sadly, these games do Dennis dirty. I kinda feel bad for him because you humiliate him multiple times in the first game, his little brother becomes king over him, which he can't be that happy about, and even now, we're whooping his butt. Technically, this is all his fault. He isn't all that aggressive, choosing to fire off crossbow bolts and hunker down behind his shield. He's also known to taunt you from time to time, which makes things even easier if you go in for the attack. I did find it cool they gave him some sort of grenade. Every once in a while, he'll throw out an explosive at you. Guess the rat and mole alliance was an even better idea than it sounded. 2 contestants down, the crowd cheering on. Who dares challenge me next? Why, King Reggie himself. Warden versus King. One shall stand, and one shall fall. Or more accurately, one shall just lose, since I do still need his help. But I rest my case. A couple things to take notice of here. Reggie is actually weak to ice, which doesn't bode well since we're fighting frozen bats. Reggie also uses a large gun, specifically a lightning gun, which he only ever had access to a small pistol before. Now, the other thing that I didn't even remember at this time was at the beginning of this story, we were delivered as a baby to the Warden. King Radis had Arlo in secret. He was also the father of Reggie and Dennis, making them our half-brothers. These two rats don't know all of this, but for us the player, this is a very important moment. Brother fighting against half-brother to see if one is worthy enough to fight alongside. You might think this would be a difficult fight, considering Reggie has defeated all contestants from the mole arena, driven back an entire army of frog invaders, not to mention he's the one that cleared out the undead living in the old crypts. Well, that's all fine and dandy, but we have something he doesn't. That being the power of the gods. In the north, we encountered those 4 statues of elemental power, granting us an immense amount of magical strength on top of all of our other combat abilities. Not to say King Reggie isn't a worthy foe, but that definitely turns the tide in our favor. And for this victory, a new achievement: win the tournament in the Crimson Keep Arena to win King Reggie's trust. At the docks, our southern allies prepare for war. Bertle the Turtle had prepared some sort of boat with something called a fuzzlebug sleeping on top. They would use this contraption to fly up north and make camp in preparation for the siege to come. Now, I thought this was a point of no return due to some dialogue. It isn't. You can complete other side quests after this. But yeah, instead of that important war, I headed out for some side quest cleanup. Most importantly, I needed to collect the last piece of the Crusader set. I had to look this one up, as in the Owl Woods, you can find the shrine behind a pile of ore. Decently hidden, I would say. In the frozen outskirts, a poison totem rises out of the ground, granting me more purple power. Across an icy lake, we find the last Crusader shrine, collecting a large and very powerful two-handed sword. No elemental damage on it, but the physical is extremely high. Another hidden mole had cozied up here, as he asked me to collect some pigment from an ice worm. It just so happens that the bunny elder had a quest for one. Nothing too much to see here, as we've already fought several types of these monsters. Although I will say how enjoyable it is to fight in a snowy biome. Always have been a big enjoyer of frigid and mountaintop locations, and this one makes the game much brighter. Also, look at this insane view, man. Honestly, the best moment in this entire game. The dark and foreboding castle looks perfect back there. We deliver that pigment to our new mole friend, now heading out to slice up a icy death march. Fun to fight, cool to look at, already did this about 8 times, so not too difficult to finish off. This gave us a quest achievement: complete all the hunts provided by Great Ears in the Warren. In the village, our old fisherman stork buddy now sells a beggar card, which should be our last one. And a fish. Traveling over to the druid's little house, it turns out you can give all the cards to him. His name is Merlin, and he hands over his precious rune stone in exchange for them. Collect all the tarot cards and deliver them to Merlin at his hut in the rift. He also sold me some tea bags and a pungent flower I had been looking everywhere for. Hand over that delivery quest in the rat village and finally slot the last 2 rune stones into place, opening up the strange door here. Inside the ancient tomb lies a giant Viking rat. He has been risen from the dead for one last duel, and this guy was tough. Most of the boss fights in this sequel have been pretty easy. All my extra tools for combat perfectly counter every situation you come across. But for once, we're fighting something on equal ground, as he seems to have the same magical power over elements we received from the statues. First phase is fairly aggressive, as he places poison pools directly in the middle, making it nearly impossible to stay out of. The axe throw is easy enough to block, and as long as you parry, dealing damage isn't an issue. After pulling out a bow, the Draugr poses much less of a threat, as you can calmly block before retaliating with a few high-powered gunshots. If I remember correctly, the fire gun was my favorite, although I did have an ice one in case of resistant opponents. At last, we get to the tricky part. Now wielding a large two-handed weapon, his attacks are nearly instant and constantly place substances around you. If they hadn't decided to change AoEs so that you could dodge them, I would have been in trouble, because for the most part I tended to dodge into them by mistake. Thankfully, a correctly timed dash avoided damage. As he breaks from combat to retrieve his weapon, we can carve him to pieces. Super slow-mo backflip that definitely felt necessary at the time, and that's another achievement. Defeat the Draugr in the Tomb of the Old King. There was a delivery I needed to drop off in the forest, and after being unable to find online where the carrots were sold at, it turns out the bird from Frog Village sold them. Bring those over to the rabbits so they can avoid starvation, and I think it's finally time we meet up with Reggie's army. Well, that was the original plan until I remembered I had still not found the ice upgrade for my magic. Slightly annoying, as in the forest I had been to this spot underground multiple times, but if you don't have the ice power yet, it doesn't show up. Oh well, now our frozen tornadoes get sent out and return for double damage. I also looked up some achievements, and one was to upgrade a chestplate to rank 3, so that's what I did. Craft a cuirass from the level 3 section at the smithy. At last, we meet back up with King Reggie. All of our allies board the flying boat as Bertle the Turtle flies us off to battle. Take a ride with Bertle in his flying contraption. Far up in the iciest peaks of the dark mountains, we take the battle to these frozen beasts. Me and Reggie together carve our way through countless hordes. Flying monsters, warriors of the night, undead friends summoned as minions of the enemy. We cut down necromancers, knights, and toothy behemoths. Enemies that had once been significant encounters once again return as defenders of this evil castle. Again, I have to mention that the shielded knights in this game are brutal. Every time they showed up, I managed to die at least 2 or 3 times. As the last frontliner is eradicated, Dennis sets off an explosion blasting through the enemy gates. We then encounter every major Darkwing general as they attempt to halt our assault. The chef was a duo fight, with one larger axe-wielding maniac and a smaller sous chef quite literally inflicting me with food poisoning. Reggie was kind enough to keep the smaller fellow on him, which gave me plenty of time to fire off lightning arrows. I'd really like the guns, but lightning is far too good with ranged items. When charged, the stuns eliminate so much of the fight without any second thought. You might be wondering, how come you never crafted other armor sets or even switched off the Crusader set? Well, I'll tell you. Fashion. My Crusader set is the perfect look for a northern warrior on the hunt for revenge. This indeed made some parts of my quest more difficult because you can become nearly immune to elemental buildup, and that tends to be the thing that does you in. No, I just decided to look as cool as heck no matter what, and avoid the poison whenever possible. This is very doable, surprisingly. I don't think doing this really hurt me much at all so far. So far, that is, but for now, we do get into a 1v1 after the mini-bag goes down, turning things into a magic spam. Afterwards, traps were able to stun the brute long enough for multiple arrows to be fired. One last parry, and we move on to the next victim. Up ahead, our entire army marches on. As victory appears before our very fingertips, Count Kazakh swoops down to fell King Reggie. He's been captured, but I swear we'll get him back. The Dark-Winged Smith was a fiery foe indeed, though there wasn't much he could do to scare me. As long as you stay vigilant, nothing here is problematic. I was starting to think he might be the easiest fight yet, all until I got hit one time, and ouch, that's my entire health bar, gone in a single second. The thing you need to watch is for once not being greedy enough. If you sit back and play more passive, there will never be a point to retaliate. Instead, you need to sprint up to him as often as you can, standing directly on top of that fire, if need be. The elements tend to scare you away from his position, but usually you have enough time before it's gonna fully build up. Gotta say, the crazy hammer spaz out he does is very humorous to watch. Not sure it ever helped him hit me, but this was never his battle to win anyway. Through a secret hideaway, I found Dennis preparing several barrels of what I would imagine are explosives. He looks very determined, kinda making me afraid for the bats. We scale up the Dracula-like castle, tearing apart more toothy monsters than I can count. Bertel had been unable to defeat the great Count Kazakh, so I step forward taking his place. But before we can get to him, his mighty Sky Scorcher would need to be sent packing. In order to survive even a few seconds here, there were several rules to learn. Never attack more than twice, as most of his follow-ups are indicated and then completed very quickly. Try not to move in without holding the block button at ready. This was a projectile-heavy fight with flame breath, fireballs, and ground fire always in play. After a few tries, all of this was flowing smoothly, except that wasn't what troubled me. After flying up, the beast would swoop down for a bite attack. This is indicated probably 2 seconds before the actual attack, while all of his other tail swoops happen much faster. The bow was unfortunately inconsistent for me, as it was best used when he's flying, but often it would fire under his tail instead of up. Waiting on parries is what deals the most damage, and I was equipped with my trusty lightning sword I acquired in the beginning. Even the sword strikes themselves build up shock that can be an absolute game changer. Fireballs and lightning strikes in particular grounded this fellow permanently. An ominous elevator takes us up above the blackened clouds. Just as we reach the king, we see him fighting for his life. But Count Kazakh doesn't fight fairly. He picks up Reggie and throws him off the tower. Only a winged beast could have survived that fall. No time to mourn him, as the most powerful enemy among the animal kingdom now faces us down. Count Kazakh is easily the hardest boss in Tales of Iron 2. The only foe to take me around an hour, maybe a little less. He was not messing around. Turns out my little armor commitment we just discussed a little bit ago was the culprit of my failures. Fire building up really quickly made this nearly impossible, so after switching to a random set I had, it was only around 2 or 3 attempts before I got him. Initially, the battle was very one-sided. He attacked and almost always missed. I would attack and deal overwhelming damage to him. You don't want to use any of your ranged ammo, nor do you need it right now. After some damage is done, he becomes much faster and will sword strike you from side to side. Oh boy, are these moves fast. After some more parries, he panics, flying up and trying to land on you. Big damage can be dealt after he finishes the 3-slam combo, although I kept getting too greedy by like a second and taking a hit here. And that's it. Not hard at all, surprisingly. Except I really should have expected this second phase. I can't even remember any second phases in the first game, or in this sequel up until now. At least not brand new health bar phases. So bravo, guys, you pulled a fast one on me. Clearly, this was the part I got stuck on, as the fire only just now showed up. When I was weaker to that buildup, I cannot avoid getting stunned, which guarantees he will hit you. Well, on my final attempt, I found out he's not really the brightest fellow, as you can sprint from one side of the arena to the other, shooting one bullet before he reaches you. Turns out all of his attacks are up close, unlike the first phase. 20 uncharged gunshots isn't enough to win, but it does get his health really low. I also had one of every trap, even the stronger ones. For whatever reason, they didn't really seem to do much against him. They just didn't stun or stop his movement like against other bosses. I believe because he was slamming down and they would break before actually hitting him. Only thing that occasionally scared me was the lightning, as he covers a very wide area, barely giving you enough time to dash out. That being said, this was an awesome fight, not only to win, but to learn. With a very satisfying slow-mo, the Count, as odd as it sounds, is down for the count. The beast was dead. The war was over. But King Reggie had paid for this victory with his life. As a favor to me, he had risked his life. And while this should be cause for celebration, all we can do is hang our heads in defeat. Defeat Count Kazakh at the top of Mount Cauldron. Upon returning to Crimson Keep, we all wonder at who will become the new king. Dennis claims it is his birthright as brother to Reggie, when out of nowhere, Robin the Ranger suggests that I become the new king. The many who I helped from up north agree, but are silenced by the turtle. Bertel reveals that I, Arlo, am in fact the son of King Radus, heir to the throne by birthright, and by popular vote it would seem. This news filled the castle with joy, but Dennis Old Dennis wasn't having any of it. He claimed to have been betrayed, swearing vengeance for a birthright that will be his. And so the Warden has become king in a twisted turn of events. War is over at last, with what can only be another peeking up over the horizon. But wait, there's more! After the credits, we get this small cutscene. That's right, people. Reggie has managed to survive and is found by an unknown group of penguins. Do I sense a trilogy in the making? With our main adventure at an end, there are still a few more achievements we need to hunt down. With the Darkwings being defeated, many Sky Scorchers are now roaming out in the wild. We will need to hunt one down in every region before they turn the people of this land into lunch. These behave exactly like the main boss Sky Scorcher we defeated recently, except the main difference being that after hunting them 3 times, you need to defeat a separate boss, and then fight them. Consider this the more challenging endgame content, if you will. The first was ransacking our farmer's village. He had been following a bird beast. You would think 2 flying enemies back to back sounds rough, but his health is so low from our previous engagements that it wasn't much at all. We collect an unhatched Scorcher egg and get an achievement. Complete all hunts provided by the Mossbug Farm Elder. Oh, and then that becomes repeatable, so as per my own rules, I had to fight him again. Ignore that giant tree blocking the view there as he falls before me. Here's me showing you that all of the village quests are completed, before heading on over to the forest. While chasing this Scorchling, I fought enough owls to get this here. Defeat 25 owl cultists in combat. This particular beast was the simplest, as he was merely hunting those basic owls. Lightning sword goes swish, swoosh, slice, and he's done for. We collect a second Scorcher egg and another achievement. Complete all the hunts provided by the, let's say, forest owls. For the repeat quests, I obviously had to do the same monster again, which was becoming fairly easy at this point. I also had to fight another were owl. This was a quest I skipped before after fighting the first one. These guys are so tough because of all the attacks they chain in a row, though by now I had acquired far better gear that nearly halved my time in combat with them. Another board completely checked off as we head over to Frog Village. Now the Scorcher here was hovering over a Toad Core, or Rancor for the Star Wars fans, and it's safe to say this was the hardest Scorchling to deal with. Giant toads for whatever reason gave me a lot of trouble. I don't think I've mentioned yet, but for this playthrough I tried to stick with the light roll as much as possible. Towards the end here I was still slightly under medium, getting the most out of my armor but still dodging as quick as a cat. Not really sure why you would go above light, at least not in Bloody Whisker mode. It's a decent system that forces you to think about what you're using, but for me, armor still didn't feel like it did much in hard mode. Plus, now that healing takes so painfully long, heavyweight has to be unplayable, I would imagine. Luckily, the first time I finished off the frog, the Scorcher was so ingrained into my reflexes now that he dropped almost instantly. A third egg gathered up for future use in our final town achievement. Complete all the hunts provided by Short Tongue in Bogmire Forge. 3 repeatable fights remained here, as somehow I didn't go back and do these earlier. Fight off our 5th or 6th Sky Scorcher copy. Check. Super annoying and difficult for no reason at all Toad. Check. Fun and simple Stealth Claw that doesn't pose much of a threat. Check. That looks like another town board completed and marked off. Next up, we have a few easy ones. Vulture birds can be found in the Rat Village Mountains if you sleep until nighttime. Defeat 25 birds in combat. 2 mudworms are outside the left part of Rat Village and each respawns every time you sleep. Defeat 25 mudworms in combat. And death marches were an extreme pain to find. These show up in Owl Forest, but good luck finding them. I was here for around 20 minutes, sleeping and teleporting around. I recommend doing this one early on during the quests, probably just dying to respawn them. Defeat 25 death marches in combat, which of course grants us the final achievement. Collect all medals. There you have every boss, every repeat boss, every quest, and every achievement completed in Tales of Iron 2. This game was a blast, start to finish. Combat is easily the best aspect, being even more fun than it was in the first game. Elemental resistances and weaknesses was great, as it made you really care about your weapons. The magic was easily my favorite mechanic, since it's built into the melee combat to let you be as aggressive as possible. Armor I didn't really care about much, as it didn't really affect me. Resistance potions didn't really matter at all outside of 2 instances, although they do help if you want to constantly buy them. The only negatives I would say are lots of repeat bosses bosses, which is not great. Chasing bosses around also feels a little silly, since you can usually just teleport around the map to their exact next location anyway. And by far the worst mechanic, healing. Refilling my bug juice 3 times just to heal fully is horrible, and the health gets taken so slowly it's unbearable towards the end of the game. Love the experience, love the story, and while it's sad to see Dennis getting left behind again, maybe he'll be the next main character. I don't know, that's kind of exciting. Also, Reggie's alive. What a great twist that had me emotionally invested. Thanks so much for watching. Leave a like and comment down below if you enjoyed what you saw, and I'll catch you next time.